All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to YSS Let's Talk. Tonight, we are going to be talking about alcohol and the intersection between sexual assault and alcohol. It is it's Alcohol Awareness Month. It's also Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So it's a great time to talk about both of them together because both of them often go together. I am Chelce Carter. I'm a prevention specialist at YSS. And with me, I have Jalisa from Access. Thank you for joining me, Jalisa.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to kind of have this conversation, discuss it with you. I work at Access, I'm a sexual abuse youth advocate. So I kind of am familiar with what the topic is going to be about, basically.
Yeah, no, I think this is a really important conversation to have because we don't often, we hear about it a lot. There's a lot of conversation about it, but I feel like there's still a lot of victim blaming out there when it comes to alcohol. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. I definitely hear more so like why were you drinking rather than why did they assault you, or like asking the perpetrator why did you assault them, or why did you come at them and or rape them or something like that. It was more what the victim did, what could she have done, or what could he have prevented, rather than what did the perpetrator do.
Exactly. I used to, in a previous job, talk to alcohol serving establishments about how to intervene in cases like this. And a lot of times, they saw that it wasn't necessarily the stranger that often we think of in this stereotype of sexual assault. We think of it's this creepy stranger who's going to come up and be a creep. In reality, it's a lot of times somebody that they came to that establishment with. So, we know from, and this is from RAIN, which is the Rape Abuse Incest National Network. We know that 8 out of 10 sexual assaults are committed by somebody that is known to the survivor. And we also know that approximately 90% of sexual assaults that are committed by an acquaintance or someone known to the victim involve alcohol. So it's a very, very overlapping thing. And I think one of the big cases that we think about, and it's been brought up to me because it's been talked about in the news and books recently, is the Stanford case when it comes to Brock Turner. Do you want to tell everybody a little bit about that, Jalisa?
Yeah, so when I first heard about the case, I was in high school at the time. It was a case of the young man, Brock Turner. He had been drinking, partying with his friends, and as he was walking along the street, he found an unconscious woman, and he assaulted her. And she had then woken up in the hospital, and unknowing that she was even assaulted in the first place, she had to hear that from the cops and personnel that were there.
Yeah. And I think one of the big things that I hear about this case as well, but he was drunk, so he didn't really know what he was doing, which to me always feels like such a cop-out, because if somebody is under the influence of alcohol and they commit any other crime in the world, whether it is theft or hit and run, they are still held responsible as if they were sober to that crime. But for some reason, sexual assault is in its own sort of special category of, well, but if there's alcohol, then it's not real, which has always brought me so much annoyance. Like, it's infuriating to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Same with me. Just like you said, you get in a car, that you know that you have been drinking, the laws about drinking and driving, and you get in that car, you knowingly are driving. And when you get in an accident and that results in someone's injury or death, even, it's a lot less black and white, or it's a lot less complex. It's more like you were driving under influence, it resulted in someone being injured or dead. You are responsible for that. That is on you. You chose those actions that led to that situation.
Yeah, and they never ask the person who got hit with the car, well, why were you walking across the road? It's very, there's a big double standard about that. I also think something that is so interesting about this is when we think about the years where people are sort of portrayed as drinking a lot, we often see that a lot in the college environment, right? People go to college, they party. This is a stereotype, and it's something that some people experience for, as their college experience. We know that alcohol plays a big role in sexual assault on college campuses. And that unfortunately, 4 out of 5 sexual assaults on a college campus will go unreported. So and my partner goes to the university and he gets sexual assault alerts on his phone all the time. So we know it happens.
Yeah, and seeing that correlation with drinking and sexual assault is not saying that there is a cause. Like alcohol did not completely cause you to make those choices that you did. We know how alcohol affects people. You're impulsive. You might not think your decision all the way through, but the fact is you can still make choices that can have consequences in the end.
Yeah. And also, I forgot this up at the top of the hour. We are going to be talking about sexual assault, and we are going to be talking about sexual assault. So this could be triggering if there is something that is brought up to you during this talk at all. There is the number for access. So they have a sexual abuse crisis line, and they can help anybody who is going through that process. I should have brought that up earlier, but we do want to let people know that that is what we will be talking about tonight. So, yeah. Thank you for reminding me that. That is our background guy tonight. So, yeah. There is. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we, as much as we see like the blame, perpetrators will blame everything else besides themselves before saying, yes, I did it. I'm accountable for my actions. I hurt someone. They're going to say, oh, it was this. The girl was dressed a certain way, or they had been drinking or something like that. And the thing that bothers me the most is like, those things are not consent. The way I dress is not consent. How much I drink is not consent. Me being asleep is not consent for someone to violate me in that way.
Exactly. And consent is really a big part of it. In fact, in Iowa and in many states, a person cannot legally give consent if they are under the influence of alcohol. I know we talk about this when we talk about in our adolescent pregnancy prevention program. Whenever we talk about, pregnancy and sexual health, we talk about consent too, because consent is a big key in all of that. So they really cannot give consent if they're under the influence. But for some reason, society doesn't quite believe that as much, which is a bother.
No, yeah, definitely. When it comes to alcohol and drinking, you're under this, or people get on the expression like, well, they should have been more mindful of how much they were drinking. They should have been doing something else. They should have dressed safer. They should have had something to protect themselves. And it's like, why is the focus always on how the victim or the survivor can prevent it? Why is it more on how we can prevent perpetrators? How can we keep people from raping each other? How can we keep people from respecting consent, respecting women in our bodies?
Well, and unfortunately, and this is something else I encountered in my previous job. Alcohol is so often used as a tool to get somebody to the point where they can't make those decisions. We trained establishments from big music venues at the Capitol at Indianapolis and Indiana, all the way down to your small little local drinking spots. And all across the board, people said, yeah, I see people come in here with someone, ply them with so much alcohol that they cannot make decisions anymore, and then walk them out the door. And they don't know what's going to happen next, because they can tell the person was uncomfortable, but the person kept pushing more and more alcohol on them to a point where they have no ability to say yes or no anymore. And if they walked in with that person, I feel like a lot of establishment owners and, employees at the establishment have a hard time figuring out, what do I do with this? It's tough.
No, yeah, it makes it an even scarier situation. This person you're supposed to be, maybe getting to know, or you just met them and they're just constantly giving you drinks sometimes. And to the point where they just negate the fact that you can give consent at all. So then their conscience is clear, apparently, because, oh, well, they didn't say no to it.
Exactly. And one of the big things that I always like to emphasize when I talk about this is it doesn't matter how much a person drank. It doesn't matter. It is not an excuse for sexual assault, and the survivor is never ever to blame for it. But we know with court cases that unfortunately they are. I see a question in the chat here. What can we do if we are in an establishment and see something like this happening, that someone is giving someone drinks and it is clear they are being taken advantage of? Thank you, Rusty. That is a wonderful question. Do you want to talk about that first, Jalisa?
Yeah, sure. One thing that I have talked about with kids a lot is kind of intervening as a bystander. How do we do that? How do we go up to someone and stop what's happening when we see something wrong? And the ways that we describe that, we give like 3 different ways to go about it. So one thing you can do is directly going up to that person. Specifically, that's easier once you assess the situation and know that it's safe to do so. Going up to that person, specifically if you maybe know the perpetrator better, you can go up to that person and say, hey, you need to knock it off. If you don't, going up to the person that is in a vulnerable state, going up to them and being like, hey, are you okay? What can I do for you? Are you safe here? Other ways we talk about intervening is, distractions, trying to get any way to take the focus off of that person that is being victimized or being attacked. Another way is, there's power in numbers, bringing people to help you divide and conquer, someone talks to the person that's involved saying, hey, are you okay? Someone gets the perpetrator further away, distance themselves from each other to kind of figure out what's going on and what you can do to help from there.
Yeah, and that's honestly exactly what we taught when we were teaching the BARC staff how to intervene. Whether it's being direct and being like, hey, come on, that they don't want you bothering them, leave them alone. Or, doing the clumsy bartender thing of, oops, I spilled this drink. Looks like I have to clean it up now, and, making it a hassle for that person to get that person more alcohol. And I think that, because it can be awkward to call out a person. I think when it comes to bystander intervention, we're really comfortable intervening with it when it's our friends or family, when it's somebody we know. But when it's a stranger, it can feel uncomfortable. So yeah, it can feel uncomfortable, but you just have to think about it as if this were somebody really close to me. What would I want for them? Would I want to step up in their case? We have another question in the chat. Thank you for these questions in the chat, y'all. Keep them coming. So consent is so often misunderstood. Can you say more about consent?
Yeah. Would you like to?
Yeah, I can start off this one. So consent is the way we teach this in the classroom, because we teach this all across the board to kids of all ages, because consent is really so important. Whether it's just giving your permission to do something. So, we think about it a lot of times in the sexual contents, but if somebody's skydiving, they have to give consent. They have to be informed of the danger. We know also if somebody is getting a surgery, you got to give your consent there too. So it really, when it comes to sex and intimacy, it should be the exact same. There's a really great model put out by Planned Parenthood that explains it very nicely. It's called FRIES. Have you heard of this, Jalisa?
I actually haven't.
Okay, it's a wonderful model. So F stands for freely given, which means that a person they aren't being pressured, they aren't being threatened. Nobody's saying, if you really loved me, you would do this, if you really cared about me, or, everybody else is doing it, so why aren't you? They aren't being pressured or threatened. In this case, they aren't under the influence. They know exactly what's going on. So consent is freely given. It is also reversible, which means a person can change their mind at any point in time for any reason. They don't owe their partner an explanation. If they are uncomfortable, they're uncomfortable. That's it. Stop what you're doing and, maybe check back in with them later. But if they said no, they said no. We also know that I is for informed. Sorry, spelling is hard. So I is for informed. This means they know exactly what's going on. They aren't under the influence. They are aware of the acts going on. It's not like they said, okay, well, we can kiss and hold hands. We're going to kiss and hold hands today. And then somebody jumps in and starts doing things beyond that. A person knows what is going on. Rusty put a good video in the comments. I am not sure what it is, but is it the tea video, Rusty?
Love the tea video.
Yes, the tea video is a great way to explain it. I'm getting off course though, y'all. So we know that, so freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic. A lot of times when we think about consent, we think, oh, well, if they say yes, then they mean yes. But we know that a person can say, yeah, I guess I want to do that. And then their body language and their tone and everything about it is saying no, even though their words are saying yes. So it's enthusiastic. Somebody should be really excited to do it, not just, okay, whatever. And it's also specific. It's checking in with your partner. It's not assuming that because you did one thing, you can jump to the next thing. So it's checking in. It's constantly knowing what is going on, being specific. So that's the FRIES model for consent. It explains it really well, really neatly. I don't know if you wanted to have anything to tack on about consent there, Jalisa.
No, yeah, I love that model. I'm glad I learned about it. But basically everything you said was what I would have said. I think this conversation is important about consent because something I'm noticing a lot more recently is that people sometimes don't even realize that they have been sexually assaulted. A lot of times it's due to the coercion phase or the fact that, well, I did say yes, but I didn't really want to do it. I felt like I had to, and later you come to this realization, it's like, oh, wait, I didn't want to do that. I wasn't completely consenting to what happened. And it becomes really confusing about the coercion part of it. Like, how far is coercion? Like, am I just saying, like, it can be as simple as just asking over and over and over again after you've been told no. So that was, but otherwise, enthusiastic yes is what I usually always say. Just, but
it's consent is so important, and even when we're talking about consent, you can start teaching about consent from such a young age. If it's just a matter of saying, do you want to hug your grandparent? Do you want to give your aunt a kiss on the cheek? Instead of saying, hey, do this, child, saying, do you want to do this? Because it's
teaching kids to have those boundaries so they know that they can't just be taken advantage of and they don't have to accept it. because if they never are given that choice, then they don't know to say, well, I don't want to hug that man, but he's asking for one and he's older than me, and I'm supposed to listen to adults. And that's kind of sometimes what can happen in those situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And once again, I do want to apologize to everyone. I should have read that content warning earlier. I just get so enthusiastic about talking about this stuff. This is some of my passions that sometimes I forget. So apologies once again to everyone. Did not mean to do that. So just want to address
so
that out.
To jump in.
Yeah. This is one of my passion areas. Yeah, so got another great question here from Rusty. What do you do with someone who has been taken advantage of or who tells us about this? Maybe they don't even remember exactly what happened, but feel something did. Who do we tell? Or should we if we are scared of breaking their trust? It's a great question.
Yeah, really great question.
I'll kick it off to you to start with, Jalisa, if you like.
Yeah. So when someone has been taken advantage of, usually, what we say is to go to someone you trust, talk to them about it, go over what happened. And the best way we can support someone that does come to us is just, believing what they say, making sure they know that it's good that they're talking about it, because as we know, it can be hard. You're scared to come forward about those things. So starting it off like that, I believe you. I thank you for telling me. I really appreciate you coming to me about this. And then going forward and supporting them through whatever they choose to do, giving them back that power that they felt like they had lost, by asking them, hey, I'm here. What do you want to do from here? Or like, what do you want to do now? How do you want to go about this? And then providing them resources that might be helpful. So referring them to places like Access, YSS, and saying, hey, these people are here. They can help you. I'm here if you want to go forward and talk to them about it. I support you through this. And, taking that first step to talk to someone is always going to be really hard, to even go to someone and say, hey, this happened and I'm scared and I don't know what to do. Really, it's about just finding someone you trust. Taking that step is going to be very difficult. But why we have talks like this is to let people know that these conversations are okay to have, that it is okay to go to someone if you need help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, it's just really important to talk about, I think, especially considering that when we look at the demographics of who sexual survivors are when it comes to age, most often, most often we are looking at people who were between the ages of 18 and 24. So in that prime sort of just figuring out, entering that college age, maybe they're starting to drink for the first time. And as somebody is entering that world, it can be really hard to know your limits. It can be hard to know what your boundaries are around that. And there can be a lot of pressure to continue engaging and drinking, even if you don't feel comfortable with it anymore. So I feel like, with that, we know about 54% of sexual assault survivors are between the ages of 18 and 24. That's more than half. So, it's just, especially at such an age where maybe people are experiencing going out, hanging out with people for the first time, entering their first relationships. This is a very vulnerable time. And unfortunately, there are people out there who are not as kind, that are looking to take advantage of somebody in that situation.
Right.
Yeah.
No, yeah, people in that category, where, perpetrators are looking for people who they deem as vulnerable, who someone they can put their power over, because it's mostly about that. It's about power and control. So you're looking at people who have been drinking to to assault. You're looking at people who are alone and stuff. And we talk a lot about how people can protect themselves, but what are we doing to prevent people from taking that or taking control over someone, using their ideas or whatever to assault someone and hurt someone, you know.
Yeah. So I'm not just checking the chat here to see if we have any other questions. It doesn't seem like it, but there are some good resources being posted there. So the Sexual Abuse Crisis Line, Access's website. We also have the suicide hotline as well. So that is, I used to actually answer that as part of my job. And I can tell you, there are a lot of people there who will listen, you know, especially if this is a hard issue and you have absolutely no idea who to reach out to, if you're looking for ways to help someone, that can be a good place to reach out to as well. Thank you for posting that, Matt, working in that background. Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah. So I also, when I was doing this research, pulled some numbers that are specific for Iowa, because we are here in Iowa. And a lot of times people might have the idea that, oh, it doesn't happen here. We see that a lot with sexual assault of, oh, it's not in my backyard, right? We are,
right.
especially in the Midwest, we tend to think this doesn't happen here. This is bigger city stuff, right? This doesn't happen here. But we know from a survey that was taken in 2010 and 2012 that when we were looking at the lifetime prevalence of sexual assault victimization of U.S. women in Iowa, let's see here. Let me get my numbers together. Sorry, y'all. That about a third of them had reported experiencing some sort of contact sexual violence, and about 7.8% had reported having a completed alcohol and drug facilitated sexual assault. So we know this stuff is happening here in Iowa. And remember, this stuff is heavily underreported. So the numbers that
Uh-oh. Did I freeze or did I think? So, yeah, as Chelce was saying, oh, are you back?
we had a little bit. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to reiterate, you know, a lot of cases go unreported, especially, you know, a lot of women don't come forward and even less men come forward about sexual assault. And, you know, and it goes a lot with the culture, like how we were talking about where the blame goes when it comes to alcohol consumption or victims of sexual assault and rape. You know, we're always talking about what the victim or survivor could have done differently, the process for even talking and coming forward. And then that process of actually, you know, getting evidence is just as traumatizing and hard to go through. For the survivor of sexual assault. So it keeps people from reporting a lot, especially with lack of information out there, resources to go to help take that step. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know, and here at YSS, we do a lot with people who are experiencing substance abuse disorders. Unfortunately, there's a high correlation between substance abuse disorders and sexual assault as well. Unfortunately, those people are put into a position where sometimes they feel like they have to put up with something because they're going through, you know, addiction and a lot of things. I am not an expert on that, but we actually are going to be seeing some of that talked about next week. We've been going about 30 minutes. Jalisa, do you have anything else you want to wrap up with today?
I don't think so. I just Access is a great resource for helping survivors of sexual and domestic violence, as well as other violent crimes. We have a sexual abuse hotline, and we're available 24/7.
Yeah, and it's so good to have that in the community. And I like to raise awareness about it anytime I can. I have my access shirt that I'll wear out in public to like let people know. And so, yeah, I like to raise awareness about it as much as possible. But so thank you y'all for joining us on this Let's Talk. We do one of these every Thursday with YSS. And as part of next week's broadcast, we're going to be talking about the past, present, and future of YSS's Youth Recovery Program. Andrew Allen will be there, Matthew Voorhees will be there, and there is a yet-to-be-announced alumni of the program who is going to share their experience with the program. Thank you all for joining us. Check in with us next week, and I'm sure Jalisa and I will be back at some point in time to talk about some of this important, complicated, tough to talk about stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me, Jalisa.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a